Hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows, and hey, you can do this. This is ADClip9. So you might have guessed this was coming. I put out a new version of ClipOnly, and so usually I will follow that up with an ADClip if I've got enough of an upgrade on the basic clipping concepts. This time, however, I'm doing some different things, and so ClipOnly is not the same as it was. Let me turn this down. I had it at 15 dB boost. So here's ClipOnly. We've got boost, match, noise ceiling, and mode. And rather than doing all the fancy stuff like apocalypse and apotheosis that I had previously, technically there's no audio setting called apotheosis. That was just a bit of fun. This has boost, match, and ClipOnly. What might ClipOnly be? This. It's the delta. It's what's being cut out. So when we got to 15 dB, we had this much of it. See, the way these things work, people usually try to do their loudenating without just splatting things completely. There are some exceptions, like Iggy Pop did a whole album that was just splatted completely as hard as possible. And there's things like, I don't know, Red Hot Chili Peppers' Californication. Famously, Vlado Meller made that be overwhelmingly distorted. But this has some different options. One of the things that you can do, let me switch around also, not play only the vintage, long since dead rock track. If I'm lucky, then I'm going to be able to be making new music this summer or maybe this fall, or I'm not sure. I've got a lot of stuff to do. And all the stuff is plugin related, so there's that. Check this out. I've got it set to match. This time, nothing's happening with that top control because it works on the bottom control, match. And this does effectively the same thing, except for that this is lowering the distortion threshold in one of the two ways that you can lower the distortion threshold in this one. And the idea with this is you can run ClipOnly to literally hear what's being crunched off the top of the mix. And that's one way of approaching this kind of thing. You could do that in such a way that you go, is this recognizable sound? Like for this one, if you did ClipOnly follows boost, by the way. Now you're hearing percussive transients being smushed. But if you push far enough, you're hearing little snippets of audio, and that's probably more audible if you're doing a clipping for sheer volume. And if I snap this back to the original setting, that's how much I'm adding to everything. And you can kind of hear the grind on the recognizable notes. Or you could have the grind obvious on literally everything, like this. Then, match works a different way. The way people use match is if you had the sound that you were trying to distort to unrecognizability, but you don't want to actually hear a difference. So if you're doing that, you're using the match setting and upping its little volume level right there. And listening for when it's obvious that something's being clipped. And if it's obvious, you pull it back. Because this is already a maxed out recording with 6 dB added. It's too much. But you could maybe do about 3 dB on top of what was already there, and you'd probably be able to get away with it. It doesn't sound wildly different. Or I can switch back over to the rock track again. New York.
York Stock Exchange.
You can use match.
They all join their hands and they set up a chant.
And we're starting to hear how squishy it is.
Through the screen like horror from Japan. And they sang.
And then match turned all the way down, we're no longer distorting. So there's two more sliders I have not showed you. One of them is noise and one of them is ceiling. This is part of how the most recent version of ADClip works. Again, this is the stuff where somebody out there, a guy that made the Lucid who made his bizarre clipper that includes noise, in an attempt to do their aliasing, which doesn't actually happen, but there are useful things that happen anyway. The default setting is what ClipOnly 3 is set to, but this time you get to fool with it. So if we run this noise again, and we start lowering noise, that's bringing more of the area where it's interfering with the sound without quite getting to the hard clip point. And it's got a funny little curve on it. So don't approach this as if it's like dB or anything. The ones in the top are actually labeled dB, but this is not. So you can kind of hear a noise coming in, but this is not designed to be the same as what Lucid calls buzzcut clipper, in the sense of letting you redesign the sound. This is more letting you fool with the settings, because if you do this, it's not actually a helpful sound. It's not actually going to do anything useful. And likewise, for ceiling, you can override that as well. We can set this back up to 0.7 or whatever. If we top this out and then start boosting, we'll set to boost. We'll get closer to actually doing a hard clip. And when we do that, what should be happening is you probably got tiny little intersample clips in there, because I set it to the ceiling that it had in ClipOnly 3 for a reason. But we can also drop it below noise, and what happens when you do that is you start taking away that noise effect. So this is similar to running match, but it'll go beyond 18 dB. And you can take it all the way down this way. But it's not necessarily a useful thing to take it this far down. And there's a lot of range in the control for relatively normal clip positions. Only at the most extreme settings does it try to clip everything out. And then we can play with this. Get sort of still including the noise factor, having the ceiling be way down. And we can boost into that as well. And get weird results like that. So you could use it as a sound design thing. This is, here, we're done with listening to that stuff. My whole intention with all of these, making the plugins, is this is for you to put sounds through. I'm not that interested in my sounds being put through. That's why it always is the same ones over and over again, is because it's about the plugin, and you should be trying sounds through this. After all, it is free. It's all Patreon supported. I'm still here, and I'll be here every week because there are enough people on the Patreon keeping me working on this full time. And so now you have ADClip9. So I don't know if you would be wanting to second guess what I've had these things set to. I really tried with ClipOnly 3 to set them up just about perfectly. So if you slam into ClipOnly 3 at a really high level, it should capture, it'll do a really good job of the safety clipping, because it's handling clipping for level very well as well. But this is the one where you do have that gain boost built in. In fact, you have 18 dB of gain built in if you want it. And you can do the boost. You can do a separate mode with the separate gain control for match. And Then you can fiddle with the noise and the ceiling, and then you can also go back to that boost control and listen to what ClipOnly is doing. Because in this case, it's not using the ClipOnly plugin. ClipOnly here means you're only listening to the clips, and so you can hear whether or not it's catching melodic notes, catching basses, catching things that'll be more obvious when they scrub against the clipping. And again, it's partly a factor of how much of that noise layer is in there interfering with the way things hit maximum clipping. And yeah, this is basically just ClipOnly 3 and turned into an ADClip where you have more of the functionality of being able to work with it and dial in the kinds of stuff that you'd want. And on that note, like I said I was going to drop this the following week, I've actually got a big pile of stuff to do because I was fooling with a recently arrived DAT plugin called Longhand. Longhand is doing sine calculations using a Taylor series in long double precision, and I did a thing where I did that and extrapolated it out as far as I could to see at what point does the Taylor series, only to like 10 stages, run out of steam, at which point when you get louder into it, the output goes crazy. Because it'll wavefold to a point, and then at a point, if you're not doing an infinite Taylor series, you're actually just doing it up properly rather than guesstimating it. What's going to happen is the wavefold will eventually break free and go into orbit. And I did this, I did it on stream, and that's exactly what it does. It freaks out and goes crazy. So if you cap that as a hard clip, then you have a distortion level of sine processing, which is unusually accurate. So then the thought is, what if I take this, which is a sine calculation, and we know that the lower parts are most accurate because it's able to follow it through several series of wavefoldings. And a computer calculating a sine is going to do a bunch of adjustments for breaking the sine down as it does its waveform thing into a single quarter, which is to some extent approximated so that it can do it quicker. And so it will do a thing of breaking things into quadrants and then resynthesizing it again. And what if those transitions between quadrants aren't perfectly even? So that gave me a way of testing that. And so I did. And I did the longhand version. That's the name of the plugin. I've been working on so many things lately. The longhand version minus exactly the same thing into a simple sine parentheses calculation. In other words, high precision manually working out the sine in longhand with the Taylor series versus using what the computer gives you in believing it's accurate. Turns out there are tiny, tiny differences, but also turns out when you subtract the computer-based sine function from the other one, what you get is this little tiny tracery of audio that's the difference between those two. But it's like 300 dB down. It's very quiet. So then what you do is you normalize it. And first thing that happened was, the floating point dithering that I do was just covering everything with noise. So I thought, well, let me fix that. I'll take away all the noise generating things. And then I got what essentially was my difference function. And that, but down at the level where floating point numbers stop even being anything. So that led me to go, Well, if my dither was coming across too loud and swamping this audio, and I know it's legitimate audio, it's just impossibly too quiet, and it's getting affected by the floating point dither that I do, why don't I dial that in better? And I did, and it worked. Now, whether you can hear it, yeah, right. But at louder types of sounds, that comes into focus and becomes a level of audio that matters. The question is, at what point does this take effect? And it turned out that the point at which it takes effect properly changed the setting for my 32-bit calculation to almost exactly what I had for the 64-bit calculation that mostly I don't even apply because I'm running an internal double precision calculator. It's a lot. Bottom line is I have a whole batch of plugins coming out, including a new reverb, which should do a pretty good job at showing this type of sound and being able to give you the sonic cues that you'd be getting anything out of from this stuff. Some people don't even like me doing this stuff, but I like doing it. So I have a big pile of plugins that are all getting revised because I have this slight change in my boilerplate code going in there. And yeah, and that's not even the only thing I'm working on. I've also doing my records for patrons. This time it's a track off of the Kinks Something Else for the $10 and up patrons, and another Beatles track for Forbidden Music. And I need to design a stomp box because I've not given up on that, and this actually works. I played it for people very briefly in my last live stream and basically distorted my microphone and hurt everybody, and so I apologize for that. But I don't apologize for working on this stomp box because that's my hope, is that I can come up with something that will let me go back into the studio and do stuff that I really enjoy. Make sounds that are not so easy to make anymore, but I'm working in that direction. So on that note, I will talk to you folks later. Again, I'm here every week. That's thanks to the Patreon. And I'll have another plugin for you next week. By next week, I probably will have these new alterations in the floating point of the ring I do brought up to speed for everything that I put out going forwards. And maybe I'll even drop the optimized sine, because once I had done all that work and I tried the new sine, what I call longhand, I think it sounded pretty good. I think it sounded pretty good even compared to the previous ones I've done along those lines. So yeah, it's bringing things into focus and trying to get the tone of this stuff to sound better bit by bit in whatever way I have to. With that, I'll get back to work and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.